Testing? Yeah.
Happy that you are here, and we know why we are here. This is I was supposed to start with a song or a little presentation, so I decided to do this what I learned when I was in Ghana. It's a welcome song. This is a welcome song. When you go there, they invite you with this song. Odunde, Odunde, Odunde Africa. Odunde, Odunde, Odunde Africa. Yeah, you have many songs, and everything in African language has a meaning. Everything has a meaning. There's nothing that don't have a meaning. This is a song when the fishermen go out to fish, and they're coming in. They sing this song. Okay, a lot of these songs are also sung in the Caribbean. Not a lot, but some of them you could find them in, because our African ancestors were brought over. So you find it in Suriname or in Haiti or in Curacao, or yeah. So this one is a fisherman song, right? Ajida is they cut a tree in Africa. They will cut a tree and dig out the tree, dig out the middle of the tree, and that's the Ajida. They put a skin on it, and it's very deep, low bass. That's the Ajida, and they're saying that Ajida, the Ajida is calling, the boat is coming. Okay.
Honorable Island Council Member Derek Simmons, Honorable Commissioner of Culture Rishlene Leadam, President of the Monuments Foundation Mr. Kenneth Kuvale, Heritage Inspector Ramy Richardson, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This evening is a very special evening because tonight you get a say in how we are going to design the reburial and memorial space for the ancestral remains. Your voice matters. So with your input, a design is going to be created and it's going to be submitted to the Island Council members. To the Executive Council members, sorry. This will be one of two such events, depending on what emerges here this evening. I would like to start off by saying, that this community engagement event is sponsored by NINSE, and NINSE, the English translation of NINSE is the National Institute for Dutch Slavery Past and Heritage, that is situated in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. But also what's important is that this event tonight could not happen without the support of partners. And our partners are the St. Eustatius Historical Foundation. Without them, we would not even be here tonight. the St. Eustatius African Burial Ground Alliance. That's a very important partner to us as well. And not last but not least, various persons within the station community. We couldn't do it without them. And some of them are here tonight, and they certainly know who they are. So we really appreciate you as a community coming together to assist us. Okay. These are the members of the Station Cultural Heritage Implementation Committee. We were established by Executive Council Decree in September 2022. So we have been at this for quite a while. Miss Jean-Marie Schmidt, she's to the far left. Then we have Felicia Freyke. We have Mr. Paul Spanner. We have Petra Ploeg to the far right at the top. And my person, Shomara Valentina. So as I stated before, this is one of two sessions in which we are going to hear your ideas, gather your ideas, so that we can co-create a reburial and a memorial plan for the Golden Bark ancestors. We believe that without community, it would not be effective. So that's why we are so happy that you are here tonight to be part of this amazing process. How did we get here? We are here tonight, August 31st, and we are having a discussion about a reburial and memorial plan for our Golden Bark ancestors. By the way, 69 ancestors are now stored in the Heritage House, but also additional ancestors are also there, ancestral remains. So I think before we continue, it is very important for us to have a conversation about how did we get here. And the person most fitting to give answers to this question is our Heritage Inspector, Remy Richardson.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. So as Mrs. Valentina just stated, it all started with the GR 2021 project in 2021, when the government at the time were looking at the possibilities for the expansion of the airport for the future. But seeing that the entire Kulturflakte, or the culture plane as we call it, that is the area on both ends of the airport and the area in which many of us here live, is labeled as a high heritage area. This area also has the indigenous Salidoid community culture on this area as well, stretching from both ends of the airport to the area called Skotsonuk. And also, many plantations also bordered this entire area. During the archaeological assessment done by SACAR at the time, who by their account, of course, stumbled upon what they call the Golden Rock Plantation Burial Site. This site was then treated as a new discovery. However, this would lead to a lot of backlash from the community, both locally and internationally. This was treated as a new project, a new discovery, which it actually was not. This location was known actually by many people within the community for many years, which of course led to mass media attention, both regionally and internationally, but also protests from the local community, who were never consulted or part of this project. At the time, the project was stopped by government because the backlash became bigger and bigger. This resulted not only in problems on island level, but also problems in both chambers of the Netherlands, which led to many questions and also negative media attention. At the time, the then Governor Commissioner Anita Francis put together the Heritage Research Commission, which was led by a former archaeologist of St. Eustatius as well, Mr. J. Havisa. The committee comprised of more than 12 members, ranging from Martinique to Barbados to St. Croix, the USA, St. Eustatius, the Netherlands, Curacao, Aruba. So expertise from Black anthropologists, historians, mainly from the Caribbean diaspora, and of course, Shomara Valentina, myself, Mr. Paul Spanner also served on the committee representing St. Eustatius. But outside of government, of course, another committee, another key player was also formed, that is the African Burial Ground Alliance, led by Mr. Kenneth Couvelier and his team, who were also instrumental in being the voice of the unheard part of the community at the time, and represented the island both internationally and also within the European part of the kingdom, also championing the then ministers and state secretaries to do something about the ongoing illegal activity of the Golden Rock site. The African Burial Ground Alliance were also the ones that gave more voice to the local community and also went to the extent of also the screening of the story of bones, which shows the parallels between St. Eustatius and the island of St. Helena in the Atlantic, who also had the unfortunate event to deal with the enslaved ancestors due to the expansion of the airport. The Heritage Research Commission was then put together, and before it was disbanded, an official report was given to government with recommendations, what they called how to avoid the blind eye approach. One of the recommendations was, of course, that there should be a body, a watch body between the NGOs, government, the community, to avoid any possible risk of this ever happening again. And of course, many of the recommendations was immediate halting of the project and reburial of the ancestors. After the Heritage Research Commission was disbanded officially and relieved of their tasks, the Heritage Implementation Committee came together, which Mrs. Valentina just gave us the name of the members. And the Department of Culture and Heritage are also part as observers and support. The Heritage Implementing Committee is, of course, charged with the implementation of the recommendations of the Research Committee. It has been no easy task for Mrs. Valentina and her team to date. As she also explained, 69 individuals were excavated from the Golden Rock site. Many of them were, of course, children. But also, this is not the only remains that we have to be reburied. We currently also have a repatriation project of many human remains that were also taken from St. Eustatius that are spread across various continents and universities and institutions. As Mrs. Valentina also just stated, there is also the Saladoid Arawak community that was also excavated in the 70s and the 80s under the current airport apron that left to the Netherlands and have been all returned to the island, that also needs to be reburied, of course. Outside of those individuals, there's also a few genetically unrecognized individuals where we do not know if these individuals are enslaved European or what ethnicity they are, but they did die more than 200 to 300 years ago, so we do need to also identify these remains as well. And of course, there are also a few individuals of the formerly enslaved community that were found on various sites on the island, also housed in the Heritage Center, that also needs to be reburied. And we also have to look to the future, because the Golden Rock burial ground site, or the Golden Rock plantation, started as early as 1650 right up until the 1780s, and then of course to the abolition of slavery in 1865. So there's a possibility that the plantation has more than 69 individuals still remaining within the vicinity of the airport. So we also have to address that issue. And also the possibility of there being much more individuals further down within the directed area. And to date, we still have not received the final report from SACAR to conclude this. So this report was never handed in by SACAR since 2021. So we are still awaiting that final report. Contact has been made with SACAR, who has pledged to complete the final report. And hopefully with that final report, we could also give the community more answers as to what is left within the vicinity of the present Golden Rock excavation site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson. Thank you very much. As he has said, it has not been easy. But we know from experience and from those who have gone before us that when it comes to ancestral remains, cultural heritage, reburial, it's a very long process. It's not something that takes place within a year or two. So we have been at it for quite a while, and we are finally making some progress, and we are determined to get the remains back in the ground. That is our end goal, to get them back in the ground. Because as some persons would say, it is very disrespectful from an African perspective to dig up remains and to have them above ground. So I think it is our duty to put them back in the ground and to give them a dignified reburial and memorial. And that's why we're here tonight, right? So, how are we going to do this? As most of you in this room know, the Dutch issued an apology for their role in the transatlantic slave trade. That happened in December of 2022. I think it was Mark Rutte. He was the one who issued the apology. And with the apology, some very interesting things emerged. They created different funds. And that means that organizations within the Kingdom of the Netherlands can write project proposals. Some of them are very extensive, very difficult. Project proposals that you would submit to various entities, and if approved, you would receive a grant to execute cultural heritage issues. With the help of the Eustatius Historical Foundation, we wrote a project proposal and we submitted it to NINSE and also the Culture Participation Fund. NINSE was a very easy process for us, but the Culture Participation Fund, the things that we had to submit, it was pretty intensive. But I must say we succeeded. We succeeded. And so we were granted funds. And our project proposal is as followed. We were granted funds to design the reburial and memorial plan with community. And we have our very expert architect here with us this evening, and he'll introduce himself shortly, and we will get the process started. We received funds to build 69 coffins with community. So the 69 ancestral remains, they all should be placed in coffins, and we want to do that with the help of a skilled carpenter and persons within the community. We have to do it together, because in order to receive these funds, it was very important that everything happened with community. We also, once land is designated, and I'm speaking this into existence, we know that the government of St. Eustatius is going to designate land. We are speaking it into existence. And once land is designated, of course, archaeological assessment needs to occur. So we receive funding for that archaeological assessment. And we have decided that we are going to create a documentary about archaeological and cultural heritage practices of the past, present, and also future. We have to tell the station story. The station story is not a unique story. The station story is an African story. And when we look at the African story and how ancestral remains are treated across the world, we will see parallels. So we have to tell that story. Also, because we need to protect our cultural heritage, because in the past, as someone has said, and the person is right here, they would come to the island and they would take, and they would take, and they would take. We have to stop that. Policies are good, but we need laws as well. We have international laws, but we believe that it is important that we create a station-specific cultural heritage ordinance that will be submitted to the Commissioner of Culture, the Executive Council, and we hope that they will carry this forward to the Island Council, because we have to do things differently. So this is what we received funding for. But there is a warning. We need additional funds to actually create the reburial and memorial space. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about building, for example, the knowledge center, the benches, the trees, everything. That will cost a lot of money. So we're going to have to see as a community what we're going to do when it comes to that. So we have received funding for the preliminary work, but this is the big baby, the actual physical work. As I said, I'm speaking this into existence. In the worst case scenario, if government does not designate land, we are going to need to have to purchase land. Can you imagine that? To rebury our ancestral remains? We hope that it does not come to that. So we hope that we will get the designated land. Are there any questions so far? Any comments based on what you've heard? Mr. Simmons, Island Council Member Simmons, I have to address you properly. There's a mic there.
Yes, thank you. I'm humbled to hear my name first as Island Council Member. But even though I'm not, in that position, I would be here as a station, you know that. I believe you missed some names with the committee. I didn't hear Mr. Urkel, implementation.
No, you're talking about Mr. Ishmael Burgo?
Yes.
No, he's not part of the implementation committee. He was part of the first commission, the research commission, but not part of the implementation committee. Okay,
yeah, it just, the reason why I bring that up because you hear so many committees mentioned, especially in relation to this whole affair, and sometimes it could come really confusing with what is what and who's when.
Point well taken. Thank you.
I have a question. How much funding did you request?
How much funding did we receive? I'm going to be transparent. We received 100,000 euros. We received 100,000 euros, but this is just for the preliminary work. We received 25,000 first from NINSE, we received another 25,000 from NINSE, and we received 50,000 from the Culture Participatie Fonds.
By the excuse of Mr. Rutte, I think it was also here, was stated for me clear that there was enough money for smart. And I think that they have to keep their promise.
They have a moral obligation. You sound like Brother Kenneth. They have a moral obligation to do that, yes, because 100,000 is nothing. If we are to really honor them in the right way, we have to create the space. We need a lot more money than that. But that is what we received. Thanks for asking that question. I was wondering, should I mention it? But for transparency purposes, I think it's a good thing. So thank you.
Okay, can I just add, to avoid the confusion with the apology that was done when then I think former government commissioner and former state secretary of finance, Mr. Van Rij, when he gave his speech, he pledged that there would be funding for a monument, but you have to remember that the research commission was already in place, and the research commission and the implementation committee predated the apology. So if you put it on a timeline, Shimada and her team were already tasked with finding, doing the reburial and the monument. When Mr. Van Rij came and the apology was done with the bewijspersonen on the various islands, all islands in general were pledged to receive a monument to the memorialization of the enslaved ancestors. So there will be 2 monuments actually, and not 1. And on the National Reparations Plan for St. Eustatius, it is also stipulated as such. So there will be a larger monument to commemorate slavery in general on St. Eustatius, and Mrs. Valentina and her team has the possibility to use the second half of the money for the reburial of the ancestral remains.
Which second half of which money?
Of the 6 million euros.
Okay, so the process continues, the process continues, but I must be honest and I'm going to be transparent. Before you can get that money, you have to put in the work. And we had to put in the work. And if you are not supported by people who know what to put in, you won't get access to that money. Not everyone got access to the Culture Participatie Fund. There were many requests, but they did not get through. We were, I won't say lucky. I think it was meant to be, because we have to fulfill this very important task. But it's not, the money is there, but you have to work so hard to get that money. Yes, Adriana?
About the second half of 6 million. We need more than the second half of 6 million still? For the site, I'm confused. The possibility, the 6 million that has been pledged, of which 1/2 at least goes towards a monument that's independent from the monument they can put.
Yeah.
And if chosen, the second half of the 6 million, so 3 million, can go towards this project, if I understand it correctly.
So to give an explanation, so there is basically more than actually 6 million, but I use the 6 million as a cutoff mark because there's a 33 million that is being divided between all of the islands. So I use the 6 million, but of course there is other funding available out there that will be coming out in the National Reparations Plan for St. Eustatius. And the money for the monument that was pledged on December 19th is already, as they say, bust. So that money is already allocated within the 6 million. And then outside of that, of course, there is money then allocated for many various initiatives from within the community, including the reburial of the ancestors from the Darkside. And the amount that is requested, that is of course up to Mrs. Valentina and the team and African Burial Ground Alliance, how much of that funding they will use for that reinterment.
Yes, I heard you say you got 100,000 euros. What were the plans for that 100,000? And there's also something else they want to add, add. Beside Mr. Rutte, the then Prime Minister, the King himself also made an apology. So because usually you have to have a project dossier. You have to make up the project dossier and know what you want and what it's going to cost. Because you don't want to say, I'm going to do this, what it costs. So the 3 million would be able to cover what you have in the project dossier.
Well, you asked about our project proposal, this is it. So this is what we requested the funds for. The 100,000, and remember, Culture Participatie, the maximum that they were given was 50,000 euros. Then say 25,000, and we could request an additional 25,000. Now, Mr. Richardson so beautifully explained that there are kind of other pots that we can tap into. So we will have to look into those things for phase 2 of the project. And Mr. Zimmerman, I'm going to introduce him now, he is also going to give an estimate. He has already given me an estimate, but I don't think he wants me to mention the figure yet. Min of May, about $200 and something thousand it would take, yes, for us to build the space with knowledge center and what have you. All right? So we would need to see how we will get access to those additional funds. So without further ado, we're going to have our engagement. Now we are still having our engagement, but we're going to go over to the next segment. I am very honored to have Mr. Jose Zimmerman. He is a master architect. Mr. Zimmerman is known by many persons in the community of Statia. He's also known in Sabre. He's also known in St. Martin. He's officially from Curaçao. He has designed many persons' homes, even in this space. He has done that. The reason he was chosen also, first of all, he supports the struggle. He understands it. He was very enthusiastic about it. And because of his skill set, he was also chosen because he has experience with memorials. So we looked at those things, and those were very important things, and hence we chose Mr. Zimmerman. He has a whole speech ready for you. And what we are going to do, once he gives his speech who he is, we are going to share our preliminary ideas with you in regards to a memorial space. These ideas did not fall out of the sky. These ideas are the result of conversations with persons within the station community. It's just an idea. You might say, I love it. You might say, I love parts of it. You might say, we're going to disregard it completely. That is entirely up to you. We are not going to dictate that. So what you bring forward, we are going to document, and he's going to create. So without further ado, please give Mr. Zimmerman a warm station welcome.
Good evening. Drummers have spoken in the beginning. Protocol has been established, so I can proceed by saying good evening and greetings from Curacao. Just to explain you a little bit about me, because I came to Station actually in the 1980s. At that time I was working for the Fundación Gas Popular under the leadership of Mr. Herman George. And our task at that moment was to document all the monuments in the historic core of Eustatius. We had to see which one to demolish, which one can be repaired, how much it cost for the reparation, etc., etc. I was again in Stasia around 2005, so this time applying for a job as director of the Stasia Housing Foundation. But my good friend took the job, so I went back to St. Martin and continue with developing what we call there the self-building program, in which we give you funding for your first home, and we guide you through the process from drawing till your key is ready. Around 2015, reaching the age of 60, I said, you know something, with the age of pension, you mustn't be in other people's land. So, took my family, we migrated back to Curacao, thinking that I don't have nothing to do no more with Windward Islands, but no, when Hurricane Irma came, people were looking for me. Where is he? Where is he? We need him. So I became then insurance claimer. So if you had damage with hurricane, I make up your report. Sometimes they claim 60. I said, no, it's 120. I always claim double and I get more than was what they wanted initially. And yeah, here I am again, standing in front of you. This time I took the task of designing this memorial for our ancestors. You hear me? I said our ancestors. We have something in common there. I took the task, but it's not easy. Why? Because normally, if I'm designing a house, a commercial building for somebody, you know, I had this routine of, I ask you, hey, what do you like? Do you have a picture of what you have seen that you would like to build? And some people come to me with a piece of paper with I call it a squabble on it. And it's my duty then to make your wish become technically possible. Well, nearly all the time it happened. But this is different because yeah, this is a burial ground, a memorial place. And those that we have to rebury, they ain't there to give me that squabble on paper for me to work with. So I had to find another approach. In this case, what I did is, well, I had a conversation with President Valentina. She explained me what more or less is needed, what they want. And with that in mind, I went to study how our ancestors used to live. How do they build in Africa, back then and now? Because a lot of people think Africa now is like it used to be 500 years ago. No, it don't go like that. But one thing came out is that they mostly built their homes in a round shape, in a cylindrical shape. There was a word that's even new for me. What it is again? I don't see where I put it, but a rondavel. It was new for me. I had to search what that means, but it has to do with roundness. Are you notice? Are you sitting in a round setup? That's the idea. The rondavel is then they also have, especially in South Africa, kraal, which is then a village where the king is, the living quarters of the king is in the center, and according to the importance of the other people, they are around it. But everything in a circle form. So I used that as an inspiration, and I came up with this sketch. You told me not to go over this line, but yeah, I came up with this sketch, and I'm gonna explain it to you. And then after explaining it to you, I would like to hear what you think. What is your remark? How do you see it? If you had to give me that squabble on paper, how would it have been? And then with that, with those information, I can adjust this sketch and come to a second round maybe with something better that can lead to the final design. Once the final design is there, next step would be complete the drawings. I mean, complete the drawings, electrical installation, plumbing, sewerage, everything. Because you will have to request for a building permit. You can't just go ahead and start to build, especially not this memorial. So, if any questions, I can, if not, I will go over to explain what this drawing entails. Any questions? No? No?
I have a question. How much square meters we talking about for the design?
Good point. Mister, this design is flexible. Why? On which land I'm gonna put it? I don't know yet. And depending on the size of the land, I can go actually to the correct size of the building. You have to take into consideration our building ordinance, which is very old, 1935, number 64, where they tell you how far you have to stay from your fence and those type of things. There are rules for if it's in one direction you're driving going in, or it's that same entrance you use as exit. So I'm depending on the land first that we don't have at this moment. And that's why I don't have sizes there. So it's just a concept.
I think one of the things we have actually think one of the things we have to take into consideration as well, we don't know how the contour of the land will be. So maybe the land is level. We could look for a level land. If it's not level, then that too would have consequences to the outcome of the land.
100% right.
Question. Ms. Valentino mentioned also that we are requesting from the government for a piece of land. But I'm sure the government question might be, do you have an idea where you want to put it? Because you can go to the government and say, I want a piece of land. But if you have a specific place or location in mind, they might be more prone to say, okay, no problem, if you want that land, you can have that land. Don't ask me. And I'm taking that the land has to be someplace admissible or accessible. Because for the persons who don't have any transportation vehicles, they would also like to be able to access and reach the land instead of having the land behind the hill or behind the mountain or wherever.
Exactly. During this first design, along with this first design, I made it's not exact, but a more or less indication how much it would cost. In that calculation, my point of departure was that we need a land the size of at least 2,000 square meters to realize this. And then next I indicated to President where I think we can find such a land. Wilhelmina Park, next to it, has a big portion of land there of 2,500 square meters. But I don't know from who it is, to whom it belongs, so we will have to go cadastre, etc., etc. That's it. And then today, I got a good chance to drive around all over the island and pinpoint some places that I think we could use. But now the follow-up to check to whom they belong, are they going to sell, what's the correct size, because I just drive around today and think, that's a good one, that's a good one.
Therese, I want to say something. We have proposed various spaces of land, and every time we got a no. We have been at it. And Mr. Richardson just reminded me of this. Stacia had 76, right? Plantations. We can't dig up a burial ground to put a burial ground. That's our dilemma. So we would need a space that is archaeologically sound. That's important because we had proposed some things. No, not possible. So we have some complexities ahead of us. 76 plantations. Burial grounds are being discovered, I won't say by the day, weekly, Therese, weekly. It's that serious. So we're going to need a piece of land that is archaeologically sound because the archaeologists are going to have to do the assessment. And I want to add, when we are having our discussion, we have to use our funds by December. We are thinking about putting them in the ground by December. I'm going forward then, skipping some steps, but just to give the context. We can't afford to wait. If we wait on private land, undivided property, Therese, the best bet we have, and in June, the end of June, we had a conversation at the Heritage House, and everyone in that room said that there is an urgency, and our strategy would be to ask government to designate that land. So we would need to know where are all the government lands, and I must be honest, we had asked, and be transparent, we had asked for a list. But because of complexities, Ms. Hook, we were not able to receive that list. We are dealing with some serious complexities, but our objective is to at least have them in the ground by December. If we do not use those funds, we have to give them back. We don't want to see that happen.
So from the
question of this gentleman, to your question, it's about the same thing. The land is it's a heavy point to look at. But I saw a lot of things today, and it is my intention to go cadastre and check to whom they belong, and then we can approach. I didn't know you have a list, but you're gonna get a second list then from me.
Ms. Edrika would like to start before you continue. You can use the mic.
Okay. It's not like a chicken and egg kind of situation. You can't decide on the design criteria because you don't know what type of land you're designing for. But you need to know what you want to do to be able to ask for the land that you need. And you have 90 days. It sounds a little confusing.
In this case, we have a preliminary design.
Yeah.
You're looking for a piece of property that fits more or less this. I know it has to be around the 2,000 square meters. So if you come with a house lot of 500 square meters, I know it ain't gonna work.
And could you share with us then some of the reasons you were told no for the types of land you've asked for?
Reasons why.
Other than space already above ground.
Other than that, because they were some were already designated to others, and so we didn't want to be in that back and forth. That is a complexity. And let me see other reasons. Some lands were not appropriate. For example, we had talked about the land on the Kerkweg behind, close, between the fort and the Dutch Reformed Church. But that's not possible because of what's under the ground. And really, what's under the ground again?
So this is a problem. One of the major problems we have here on St. Eustatius is we had populations that fluctuated sometimes between 10,000 up to 22,000. Lots of people on this little island. 76 plantations. What we know today as Salem Cemetery is really a 20th century placement on that lot. We all know how many graves we see there, most of them modern. The only public cemetery on St. Eustatius is the Old Church Cemetery, which by its last grave count in the 70s had 182 graves on it. That's the cemetery opposite the hospital. So if you counted from, let's say, 1626, let's go to 1900, where is everyone buried? If you know, Salem is a 20th century burial ground. So what we do know with 76 plantations, the majority of people were being buried on their plantations, both enslaved and plantation owners, Europeans, everyone. What we also do not know on Statia is how long did this continue after slavery. So that's also one of the issues that we have. And why the archaeological assessment that Shilmara explains is so important, because Statia does not look the same below the ground as it is above the ground. You would be surprised and baffled what below the ground looks like. And one example why the lot that was allocated at the time between the Fort Oranje and the Dutch Reformed Church, we thought it would be a prominent spot to build such a monument. But in around the 1820s, when the island was in the French possession, there was a huge yellow fever outbreak. The house of Miss now deceased Louise von Putten actually served as a hospital for quite a long time. For centuries, that was a hospital building. And during this mass outbreak of yellow fever, about 300 French soldiers died at once. And they were all buried in a mass grave behind that entire spot. So if you go to that spot also, you will also notice that there's no one buried behind the Dutch Reformed Church. And there's a reason there's no one buried there, because the land, both within the premises and outside of the wall, there are bodies that were dumped there because they needed to be buried quite quickly. And on the island, of course, we had a lot of historical churches as well that no longer exist. The Lutheran Church had a Lutheran cemetery, the Anglican Church had an Anglican cemetery, and basically we are living today on a large graveyard, as sad as it sounds. And like was explained, it is not to be taken quite lightly about the graves. In my role as the heritage inspector, weekly when someone is building or needs their land to be cleared, to prepare to be built, random graves do pop up regularly. And I'm not talking about a simple grave, but I'm talking about complete granite headstones that pop up sometimes at people's front door.
Okay. It's important, the discussion is going very great. We do want to share our preliminary ideas with you because we need to hear from you what you envision.
Yes, but this is in connection with the 76 plantation. I was going to ask if it is mapped out, the 76 plantation, if they, where they are, where the location on the island.
The prediction of the plantations on the island is quite easy actually. Many people don't know it, but the majority of station roads, except those that we all knew, the paved roads at least that we all knew as early as you could remember, all existed 300 years ago. Many of them were always there. So for example, the Courthouseweg, Pisuergeweg, that long road coming from in front of the hospital, going all the way to Lynch to English Quarter was there 300 years ago on the same spot. The tamarind trees coming across the same country road were there also 300 years ago. Even those at the Gwendolyn Pudding School, that long stretch of road, they were all there. So off of those maps, we can actually predict exactly where the plantation boundaries fell. And to give you an example, between the southern end of the airport all the way to Smoke Alley, there are about 4 large plantations on that parcel of land. And the biggest plantations actually stretch into them. We know exactly the names and where the bounds started and where they ended. So basically there's a possibility that the cemeteries are all, for the majority, within the airport side, because we also did a kind of predictive, what we call Vorspelling, where you can see exactly where the cemeteries are. And on station we are fortunate enough to know that if you find a well, you will find the plantation house and you will find a cemetery, which creates a kind of driehoek. And if you look at the Golden Rock plantation, there's the well opposite Erling house. And then right below Erling house is exactly on a rowing. You can see a piece of the wall. And directly in front, there's a cemetery. And if you go down at the well, at the fire department right here, there's the well, there's a plantation house inside, and right there, it's another triangle. And basically, whenever we see those triangles, we already predict there's a cemetery there. So it's quite easy to predict, fortunately for us.
Okay, Yuri, lots of questions. You can come to the mic, eh? Come to the mic. Yeah, come to the mic.
This is more a half comment and a half question. Because station is now a literal burial ground. Everywhere there's bodies, and all of them have to be respected. That's the comment. What happens now with further development of the island, with all these places that are now considered sacred?
Well,
in that sense.
I think you would realize just now that I don't know if none of the 3 of us use the word sacred outside of what we do know as the label burial ground. So we do know of course Salem, etc. What I always will advise is that development will come. What we need to do as an island together as government is make sure that we have a more action-reaction. So when we stumble across these things, we can probably have the ordinances in place that allow us to do rescue archaeology. So reinterred people into other locations. So where a monument such as this, for example, not only serves as a purpose for the 69 individuals, but for all other enslaved individuals as well. When you look at any other human remains found from former colonists, whatever, on the island, we should be able to also have an ordinance that allows us to excavate those human remains with their gravestone and reinter them at another location, because as much as it is a sacred space, this is something common in the rest of the world, and we shouldn't exclude ourselves from these practices as long as we do it respectfully.
Not to be racist, but you can dig up African remains, you can do DNA testing and to determine someone's ancestry. What happens when you find the European remains? They go there. Where do we put them? What is, we don't consider that for the ordinance? Because I vote on behalf of my ancestors, they are not welcome.
I just want to say that that is a very important discussion, but this is going to be a Reburial and memorial for the ancestral remains, so for the African remains. Eventually, and we would have to see where we would want to put the indigenous remains, because they're extinct, that group of people.
That's also one of the issues we have. We also have the Saladoid Indians that lived on the island, a subtribe of the Arawaks. We also have their human remains here, and how do we deal with human remains when the gap between them and their most recent ancestors, the Taínos, for example, is already 1,000 years. So how do we reinter them? What rituals do we use? So there's a huge major discussion that we have to do as an island. And to answer your question, the old church cemetery opposite the hospital is labeled the public cemetery since 1775. So we do not have to reinvent the wheel. If we find bodies of European ethnic descent, it would be, I think, we would just advise government, the best reinterment would be there, because this is something they themselves are practicing. But for now, we just focus on the enslaved ancestors.
Yeah, a lot of questions. Zimmerman. Wow, I love it. I love it. I love it.
It's not a question, but based on what you were saying, in my opinion, just an opinion, is that whether we know what rituals we're supposed to use in order to bury them, at the end of the day, they are human beings and they should be respected. So I think it's just a nice ceremony and we put them back in the ground is enough respect. We are all human beings, and I think that is the main goal that Ms. Valentina has in her group, and I think it's a good idea. But we have to respect all remains, whether doesn't matter what. Exactly.
Yeah, I would like to know if it has been considered that the remains that was found at the airport, that they can be reburied at the location where they was taken from, because to me, we've been the slaves at that time been through a very horrible Holocaust. The enslaved people at that time been through a very, the worst Holocaust ever in the history of the world. So I believe that that they should be reburied. That's my personal opinion, that they should be reburied where they were taken from. And I also even spoke to the airport management, about that. And they told me that that area can be reserved, for doing that by placing a additional fence in the back of the existing fence, and securing that area, but it will remain airport premises. But you will be able to have access to that area to visit your ancestors. Another thing too is that to me, for Stacia, it's a very sentimental issue, you understand? And I also understood that even children and families was found there. So I believe that they should be reburied where they took them from. So that's my question. Has it been considered for them to be reburied there?
We have going back and forth, but again, back and forth. Put them there, find somewhere else. At a given moment, you have to make a decision, you have to stick with it, because we're going to be going back and forth. We would hear it's not possible because the airport is going to be developed. We did a survey. Lots of individuals said if they died a violent death, which they did, because enslavement was violence, don't put them there. Find a new location for them. And if we do not have access to them, whenever we want, do not put them there, because people are saying, from the survey, people are saying, We need a physical space where we can go, where we can sit, where we can reflect, and that won't be possible at the airport. So Mr. Brissett, we were on that trend in the beginning, but we had to step off, and we had to submit a project proposal, and the project is for a design that certainly won't fit within the airport premises. So I think there comes a time when we capture all the voices, and that there comes a time that we make a decision. And so we have decided we are going to envision a memorial and reburial space, and we have to have the land designated to us, Commissioner of Culture. And so we would like to proceed from there. We have to make a decision. You then come to the mic, and then I'm going to give it back to Mr. Zimmerman for him to explain the idea.
But at the end of the day, we still have the issue whereby we have a burial ground at the airport. What is going to be done with those remains? So, I mean, you just can't go and dig them up. It's internationally not appropriate to do those type of stuff. So I find we should take the bull by the horn right now and further look into the options, because we have a cemetery there that we would like to, visit our ancestors. You know, make it into a park where children can play and stuff like that. We don't have no parks here on the island, really. We only have one park on the island, Wilhelmina Park. So I find that that section of property there should be secured for our future generations, which is possible in my opinion.
Behind the airport?
Yeah, right where the cemetery is right now, where the burial ground is right now, where our ancestral burial ground is. It's an ancestral burial ground. How you twist it or turn it, something needs to be done, a decision needs to be made. What is going to happen to those remains? It's since 2021 or even before that we knew that there's a burial ground there. So I think we should look into that option still and get something done.
Of course, we take your comments and your views very seriously, Mr. Brissett, and we are in constant conversation with each other as to what are we going to do at that space. One thing that we can agree on, Mr. Brissett, is that something needs to come there. And as in the words of the Deputy Island Governor, she said people need to realize once they step off of Guinea that they're stepping on sacred ground. So something needs to happen there. The question is, do we also put a memorial there? Do we also put parks there? There's a whole lot to think about, Mr. Brissett, and we have had this conversation, you wouldn't imagine. We have met with the Planning Bureau, we have, it's long and it's tedious. So I hear what you're saying, and we acknowledge that, and we have to do something with that. This evening, we are going to share the preliminary ideas, which is also a park. It's also a place where you go with your family and you sit. That is why we're talking about a space of at least 2,000 square meters, because we need to have a physical space where we go. And remember, as Mr. Richardson said, we will encounter additional remains, and we need to have a place to put them as well. All right?
Well, for my opinion, you have the space there. That's more than enough.
Okay. Thank you. I would like Mr. Zimmerman to go over to explain. Let him start explaining the preliminary, and then we can give our ideas as to what we envision. Okay? So I have to watch the time as well.
Actually, this line here, say the paper is the plot of land. Let me start that way. The paper is the plot of land. So put a building in the center of the land. That idea of the Africans building in the center. I didn't do it wrong because I needed walls to, like these two here, for me to put restrooms for ladies and for gents. This one I use for entrance and exit. So the space in between that I don't know yet how big it is, because I don't know how big the land comes, but this have to serve then as the space for like a museum. Like you have leaflets, pamphlets in there. You have maybe sculptures and drawings and things, so you can enter, get your information here. The ancestors, I took a certain distance here. Again, I don't know how much this is. I just said, well, listen, if there is a cultural event, a folkloric show, something like that, I should have sufficient space for it to happen in front of the memorial place. So next then I put benches where people can sit, go around, except for here, entrance and exit. And the graves then, seven, so that's 14. Let me tell you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 14, that's 16, and 28 is 84 graves. Whereas I have these like, you could say in the ground, just taking out maybe a foot, and these in the back, a little bit elevated. So that if you are in here and you take a look outside, you still can look at those here at the outer part of the circle. Let me still call it a circle. And then I said benches already. So trees, because it has to be a park, so trees, greenery around. At the entrance I have here, and I do this in form of a container, but yeah, it's a sketch, so we have to work it out. But it's an information center where you can, once you reach here, you can ask for information. Maybe if there's an event, you can buy your ticket here. The same thing I did here in the back here, but this I put it as an office storage. I think that's about it. Yes, I see hand going up already. One there.
Come to the mic, please. If you have a question, come to the mic. Comment.
This is a comment, kind of. The government is currently busy with this exact project in a different capacity, so this could be an opportunity. I consulted briefly with Commissioner Leerdam and our Heritage Inspector, and there is a project called the Region Deal. It consists of 6 projects, and one of the projects focuses on slavery past. And the contract literally states, station deserves a space for commemoration that is a natural space where people can ask questions, come together, reflect. Land is already reserved for it. We're not getting into the details to make sure we're not messing up people's property line. But it sounds like your dream kind of already is in, like, yeah, this exists.
You are saying there is a plan like this already.
There is a hope for this plan. The money is there, is almost there. The space is in mind. We have the same design criteria. So yeah.
So we don't have to look for land.
We have to make sure we're not on the people property line. But other than that, yeah. I don't know about the 2,500 square meters. That would have to be looked into. But yeah, you should have this conversation.
More or less, it would be 2,000, 2,200.
That depends on the property line.
And then we can adjust.
What a plantation name? Yes, it's borders to the dead plantation. So that's something to look into. But literally, Memorial Park, Information Center, all the parks, trees. Just what I shared that.
So that's an important detail, but we can still push forward.
Yeah.
We are going to still push forward with our plan, and if we can bring it together, we will. But we have a mandate also to fulfill, and we are going to fulfill our mandate. So if in the end, Ms. Adrina, if it all works out, it works out, but we are pushing forward. And I'm so happy that people have the same idea. By the way, maybe this is not what persons in this room want, because it's a preliminary idea, and it's up to you to give your voices to this. And that is why we have 4 categories, because I think it's important to have categories to lead the conversation. We have to look at neighborhood and land characteristics. We have to look at the physical characteristics. We have to look at the visitor experience. And we have to look at the learning and knowledge experience. That is very important. So I think it's very important to guide this conversation for us to structure it a bit by looking at these elements and going around the room, because I would like to hear as many voices as possible, going around the room and you letting me know, hey, when we are thinking about land and neighborhood characteristics, what are the things that we have to pay attention to? And then we're going to go over to the next category, and then the next category, and the next category. So I'm going to try to structure it a bit. I know it's difficult, but I think we have to do that.
Question.
All right?
Yeah, but
Yes,
it's interesting, no? I actually wanted to look now into their plans to see.
It's interesting, but we have an assignment and we are going to push forward with our assignment tonight. We have an assignment. We are not going to necessarily put all our eggs in one basket and it doesn't work out. I know, Stacia. Yeah. We are pushing forward. Go ahead, Bea.
Question, comment.
Yeah. I still think you would have to take into account the area of land, because you see you want to accommodate 84 graves. What happens when it's all used? You tend to go then up, or so you should have an idea of the area of land.
We spoke about that, and actually you can build on top, so you can double up the space. Instead of 84, 168.
Okay.
Okay, listen, I have to be a little strict, and I would like us to focus first. I would like us to focus first on the neighborhood and land characteristics. So for example, what type of neighborhood? We already discussed that in June, eh? We have already discussed it in June. Accessibility, parking arrangement, flow of traffic. Mr. Zimmerman kind of touched on that. So I would please like to go around the room, and I would like to hear your views on the neighborhood characteristics, because yeah, so that Mr. Zimmerman so that we can capture the ideas, so that he can come with the concepts. We have to try to guide the process a bit. So I would like to start with the neighborhood characteristic. Please come to the mic and give your ideas. We are documenting it, and we are going to take that with us, and then we're going to go over to another aspect of it. So when you think of neighborhood characteristics and land characteristics, one of the things we agreed on, well, we kind of said, and Ms. Brooks was there as well, we do not want to put the reburial space in a built-up area. Because if we do, we're going to have to ask permission from every single house owner, right? In the direct, no. So we thought in June, when we had a discussion in June, we think it should be a quiet space, away from the residential area, where we can go and do our thing in peace. So that's one of the things that came forward in June. So please come to the mic. If you have ideas, please let us know, and then we will document it.
I just have a question for you guys, and this is not as heritage perspective, but more as just a citizen. Yeah. I wanted to know why we're talking about the space in the neighborhood, but I get the feeling that we are creating a cemetery with the visible graves. And I just wanted to know why the graves were the center point of this memorial, but more engaging with what's going on at the center. Was that deliberate, or what was the initiative behind of that? Because it almost sounds counteractive that we are Europeanizing the memorial space by creating a cemetery when we are talking about memorialization. And I do not think the amount of graves there, by stacking, we will create a cemetery knowing what is to expect here on St. Eustatius, which might eventually change the visibility and the beauty of the park by encasing ourselves by graves.
as you go higher. So I wanted to know why that choice was made for that design.
I'm going to let Mr. Zimmerman answer that, but this is how I want to respond to you. We said it's a preliminary idea. You're bringing something forward, so you're talking about the physical aspects of it. So you are basically saying, perhaps it's not a good idea for us to have the graves at the outskirt. That's what you're saying? And not visible. And if that is, that's an idea, we are going to take it into consideration. But maybe Zimmerman would like to explain his idea, his rationale for creating this memorial. But this is a suggestion.
Yeah. What I would like to say is it depends what type of fencing you have around the place. If you build up a wall from the outside, you don't see nothing. If it's a wire fencing you have, for instance, everything is visible from the outside. Besides that, by putting them at the outside of the circle, let me call it still circle, you have more space for the graves. If I put the graves in the center and the other activities outside, then I have less space in the center for the graves.
And will it be on the outside or on the ground? So can the design, for example, like with studio when they have to, like with the facilities company, when they have to prepare certain areas, they stop paving it and they use blocks. So when you have to go back under, you just move the blocks, so you usually edit the room, put the blocks back.
But then how you gonna recognize there's a grave there? At least the grave.
You can use color.
Sorry?
You can use color. It could be, like, for example, let's say you keep your exact shape, but the area surrounding your shape is a different color block. Then we know that entire area is the way of people are buried. It could be that temple.
Yeah, that's the other sketch that I made, where I put a pavement in between the graves with bricks. Yeah. And in between the graves with gravel stone.
It's a suggestion.
Yes.
It's a suggestion. Because both of you are proposing, but we're going to go back to the neighborhood characteristics. I want to stick to the plan. You are suggesting not to make the graves visible. That's what you're saying. So we are taking that idea and we overwhelmingly visible.
Visible. What I mean, like from a design perspective, let's say you have the 88 there now. When you start to re-inter, you go clockwise or counterclockwise. You're not going to have that symmetry anymore because you're going to have a few high there as you go higher, while over there is low. So my question was, why it was not that the enslaved ancestors were the center of the attention for reverence, so a kind of mausoleum where you can continuously re-inter, because all the people you have around will not have names. You will just have a lot of graves. So whether they will all be white or what, so how would you even know what is exactly going on around you? So that's why I wanted to know why that wasn't chosen instead.
In that case, you need much more land. Instead of the 2,500 square meters that I think is necessary for this, I think you're going to need much more, maybe 5,000, 6,000 square meters.
I want to be strict. I am going to be strict. I said, and I'm being strict, we are now going to discuss, but we take a note of that physical aspect. So Adriana, we're talking about the neighborhood characteristics. And please, those who have ideas for the neighborhood characteristics, please come to the mic and share your ideas, and then we are going to go over to the next category. I want the conversation to be as orderly as it possibly can be. But Kenneth, do you have something related to the neighborhood and land characteristic?
I think so, but it's
you see how station people is doing? Okay.
It could be controversial. So before I go there, I would like to make a remark pertaining to the sketch, because where you're coming into the memorial center, where you're going to be memorializing the ancestors, as far as I understood the sketch. But at the same time, being there in that memorial space, you're seeing the bathrooms. Why not leave the bathroom like you have outside, for instance, where you spoke of container? Because I think it's very undignified and now in your space, visualizing while you're memorizing bad books. That's my remark pertaining to the sketch. Pertaining to the neighborhood ideas, and you're seeing this happening in places like Barbados. We have English Quarter. I think that's one of the biggest plantations on this island right now. Because in time to come, we're going to have more ancestors which will be excavated or, be taken from their resting place, and we will need space. So if you talk about the neighborhood and the landscape characteristic, English Quarter is one of the biggest African plantations which the Ponds own today. You are seeing in places like Barbados, areas like this, the government is buying it back and creating that memorial space. Now, when it comes to the enslaver and their remains, I would tend to say, let the colonial masters of today, enslavers of today, take them back to Europe. Okay? I'm not concerned about their remains. I'm concerned about our African ancestors' remains, where they should be given a permanent, dignified resting place and don't have to be disturbed constantly. So that would be my contribution when I think of English Quarter. That is a huge, and it's how all of the characteristics to Okay. It has all the characteristics which we are talking about here. The only dilemma here is the idea about, okay, is government willing to purchase that land back? Is the owner of that land today, are they willing to sell, which they are doing anyhow? So we should think about those options, I would say.
Thank you. You have something related to neighborhood and characteristics? Please comment then.
I have to agree with you when you mention about the bathrooms at the location they are now. And we have been discussing that because maybe how they are now is not even enough. Because if you have an event and a lot of people walking up and down there, one toilet, one face basin, though, that ain't gonna be enough. So yes, we have been discussing that, and the possibility is real to move it to another location.
Thank you. And one final point, which I forgot to make. Another thing, coming back to the African tradition, we don't bury our ancestors among other races or other populations. They have to be separated. That's something need to be very clear.
Yeah.
We don't mix them.
Adriana, do you have a comment?
Neighborhood. I'm a bit biased, I will admit to that. But when it comes to neighborhood, I think definitely something quiet and relaxing is important, but also a place the stations already use. And also, I think it would be nice to have a combination between land and sea because of the type of culture we have and the type of people that we are. So I think, like for example, English Quarter, I just seen sea breeze killing the trees, and I just seen fighting with the small road we cross behind the mountain, the resort across there. Doesn't speak to my spirit, but I would say a place where people already historically have gathered here together to spend time already. I think that is a gift for the community and an opportunity to reflect and connect.
So when we are thinking about designated land, it should be an area where people are accustomed of coming together. That's what you're saying. Okay. And connection to land and water. That's what you're saying. That's very interesting. So this is a good suggestion. Any additional suggestions in regards to neighborhood and land characteristics? If not, I'm going to go over to the next category.
Yeah, this is more pertaining to the design, what I saw. To me, the design is, how it's designed is too congested. You have the, what I believe, the research center also in the design, you have a memorial. Why don't we divide it up? We have a park where the remains can be buried, for instance, and then you have the research. The parkway, you have a memorial, of course, a sculpture or whatsoever, a memorial, and then you have the research center somewhere else.
You're talking about sectioning it off? You're talking about different sections?
Not different sections. I mean, you have a plot of land where you have the park, and then you have somewhere else where you have the research center, etc. / memorial.
So you're saying
not everything, you know.
So you're saying another location for the knowledge center, not necessarily in the park.
Not necessarily.
Oh, that's what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, so we use the park as like the area where where you bury our ancestors, and you put a memorial there, of course, and then you have the research center / community center, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You know?
Or what can happen is that we refer to the existing knowledge centers, the Heritage House, the museum, or somewhere else, and that have people visit those other spaces. But you're saying you really want just a park to be, just to be.
Why do I say a park? Because we have the land there, it belongs to government, the airport premises belongs to government. They are a park. It's not it's not going to obstruct the airport traffic, because it's more than 75 meters away from the landing strip. If you build within the 75 meters, then it's an obstruction. But the burial ground, existing burial ground, is out of that path.
The good thing is that's government land, right?
Of course.
So that's government land. So we will see if they will designate that land or it would be something else. No, I don't mean wait.
So splitting the burial place from the...
That's what he's saying.
Yeah. I mean, you could put a memorial there by the park too, of course, you know, so when people come, they know what it is, you know, what to expect.
And so that's why I added that we already have knowledge spaces, but they would have to be expanded. We have the Heritage House, we have the Eustatius Historical Foundation. So what he's saying is then you come to that space and there could be something that refers to the other spaces. Interesting.
In my humble opinion, I think if we are going to create this space, it doesn't make sense to me to create another space to refer back to this space. If you're going to put it, you're going to have everything there that you get one information, it is all about, if I bring tourists there, for example, then I'm going to tell them, okay, this is the memorial, this is where the ancestors are buried, but we have to go to another location to get the information about what we have here. That doesn't make sense to me. In my opinion, when they reach on that premises, it's supposed to give them a complete experience of exactly what we are going to do.
Okay, this is how we're going to solve this. The great thing about this evening is that Mr. Zimmerman, after he has captured all the ideas, he's going to come with 3 concepts. Perhaps we can come with a concept where the knowledge center is in that space, and perhaps another concept could be where it is separated. How we're going to solve the issue is we're going to put it to a vote. So that means that the whole station better show up, Mr. Brissett, because we want to put it to a vote, and the one that is most favored, that's the one we're going to go with. So we're going to bear that in mind, because these are 2 different perspectives. So we're going to see how we're going to work around that, to be as inclusive as we can possibly be. You all giving me hard work.
Yeah, on the same topic, and I said this already in the past, to me, stations are very small. And when you look at the area where it's used, it's less than half the island. So when you start talking about creating these spaces, putting everything together, you are creating a utopia kind of project, which to me is not going to be realized. You're talking about December. I think for that to be realized, I don't even see it done in the next 20 years, because you're constantly going to be looking for appropriate area within this small space. It's not a Europe. You don't have these large land masses like often you have at the airport have these restrictions, and you come on a small island and then you have problems. So be very conscious with the choices you make. That may be the ideal choice you would want, but the area is small, station small.
You know, thank you for saying that, because and council member Simmons has been reminding us of this the whole time. We have to be practical, we have to be realistic, we have to manage our expectations, and we have to create something that fits our local situation. And if we are to elaborate what you're saying in our plans, we might not be able to execute it. That's what you're saying. Mr. Kubale, do you have something related to the neighborhood?
Yeah.
And if there's someone else who has something else to add about the neighborhood, please come to the mic. If not, I'm going to go over to the next segment.
I'm hearing about a park and a park and a park. Are we talking about a reburial area and a memorializing space at the same time when you speak about it? Just for my understanding.
In this design, yes.
Yes, good. And then we are
design is everything together.
Yeah, and then we are speaking about a knowledge center. A knowledge center. Yeah, but a knowledge center again is a place where is more in the field of academia, I would tend to say. So it shouldn't be like that, I would say. You have a memorial space where our ancestors are. Could I finish?
I didn't stop you.
Okay. The movement kind of stopped me. Anyhow, yeah, what we need is a space where our ancestors are going to be reburied in a dignified manner, and where the descendants can go and in the quietness of that moment and memorialize at any given moment their ancestors. That I will say that need to be that particular space. A knowledge center should not be included there.
So,
and like I said, the historical foundation, areas like that, could be designed. There's enough space there where we can create that world of academia, where people can come in for educational reason, information, etc. But our ancestors need to be in their perfect quiet space, and you can go there in that quietness and memorialize them at any given moment.
So this is how I want.
Let me finish with the last factor. To come back to you, Miss, I don't agree with you when you speak about it has to be in an area where people are accustomed. We need to change our attitude at things too. So I am saying the English Quarter area, if that could be the case, is a huge space, which is plantation of our ancestors, and if that is a feasible option, it is ways we can make it. If we can make ways and other roads to go to the resort and you name it, we should be thinking about how we can access those places for our own benefit at the same time. So that's my idea.
I'm going to give you the mic just now. One thing I have to say that is very important, we are all giving our perspectives, and we're not going to have the same ideas. We are trying to capture all the ideas. You are saying what's important to you, Brother Kenneth, you are saying what's important to you, Mr. Brissett is saying what's important to him, Mr. Corder is saying what's important to him. Our challenge now is, how can we bring everything together and create something that most of us can stand behind? One idea is not necessarily better than the other idea, because we all come from a certain perspective. So I'm just saying that we are sharing ideas. We are not going to necessarily have the same ideas, so I just want to put that out there. And with that being said, Adriana, I'm going to give you the mic. Before the show, Mrs. Zimmerman would like to say something, but in between, you have a question. But I am offering some kind of structure in this, the physical characteristics. I want you to think about this. What do you want to see when you visit that space? How do we create a link with the descendant community? So when we enter that space, we are the descendant community. What should we see that tells us we are linked? What should we physically see? What will draw new people to the site? Where and how the burial of the ancestral remains, we have already been discussing that. Restrooms, do we need a knowledge center? We are discussing that. Do we need a sculpture? If so, what should that sculpture look like? Where should it be placed? Etc., etc., etc. Mr. Zimmerman has a question.
I just want to understand something. Mister, your idea, is it the same?
It's the same
as his idea? Yes. Then I understand you good.
Yes.
Okay.
Are there any other persons, Brother Kenneth? I see you there, and Mr. Simmons. I want to capture as many different voices as possible. Are there other persons who have ideas in regards to the physical space? Meneer
Yes. I'm not so much on mic time, but some of you know that I worked a lot of times in Africa, and if I see roundabouts, I wrote it up before you told me, because I thought also this is the idea you have to look at the kingdom of Lesotho, which is a small kind of kingdom inside South Africa. South Africa, yes, and I visited there and did some work there for education. The roundabouts over there are really beautiful, also big roundabouts, which I think would, if it would be here, it would be fantastic. That gives a good idea of. Further on, I visited Hiroshima, and that is a park, which is also a memorial place. What I found very, very impressive over there was a small hill. And they were telling us that there were a lot of people who were buried there in the hill. And then it looks like, and if you have such a hill also visible from outside, then people can reflect on it. Because that is what you want. You don't want a cemetery, what people say. You want a reflection. And I think that is would be very good. And the last thing, why don't you do also, if you look at your ancestors, why don't you bring some African art inside? In the roundabout. In the roundabout, bring some African art inside. I think that people would love it. You see the more interest here on Statia for African art. I think that would be a very, very good connection also.
Thank you. So thank you, Mayor Flegling, because you understand the assignment. And so what you're actually saying, when I visit that space, this is what I would like to see. And you are, for example, mentioning African art. You talked about the hill. So when we visit the space, what do we want to see? How do we create the connection with those of us living now and the ancestors then? Do we put the July tree? We talked about that a whole lot. Is it trees that we put, and the July tree is our national? No, it's not. But it's a very important tree. We use it for a lot of things. Is that what we want to put? So when we visit the space, what do we want to see? African art, sculptures, a sculpture, and if we want a sculpture, what should that look like? These are the things we have to talk about so that when we move forward, we have an idea as to how we want to design it. So if we want a sculpture, what type of sculpture? Where should it be located on the space? Think about that, and if anyone has an idea, please come to the mic.
When it comes to the what do you want to see here on when it comes to our enslaved ancestors, I don't know if the community knows, but many of them were first generation, so that means they were not born on St. Eustatius. They were born in Africa and they died here on St. Eustatius. Shemada and the committee also know we have more information to go by, so we know that there are very strong indications that they came from the Congo region of Africa. So we can have a lot of visualizations we can also use for that mineralization as well. One of the things I would like to see is the use of the July trees, because the July trees for me are not only something that we started now, but why is because before slavery was abolished, paper was very expensive, and it was one of the materials that would degrade the fastest here on St. Eustatius. So the governor, way before slavery was abolished, reinstated an official color to symbolize freedom. And on St. Eustatius, by official decree in The Hague, station was given the color red. So you would use red ribbons or red patches of clothing to indicate that you were a free person on St. Eustatius. When slavery was abolished, they actually ran out of red material because now everyone was free. So they started to use the July flowers because it was the easiest thing to find, to decorate themselves with and to decorate the houses with. And it's a tradition that we still use today. So I would really like to see, we talk about mineralization in of course, in physical materials like brick and concrete, but I would like to see a natural mineralization as well, especially with the use of those red July trees here on St. Eustatius for this project.
It could be, yes. Good.
Yeah, on physical characteristic. My view when you, this is talking as an anthropologist, the only station anthropologist in the world. When I saw these areas, to me it's very difficult to separate the area from a burial area, where you're going to have remains that are going to be reburied. Remains on Statia are buried in a certain way. The first thing when I looked at the drawing, I wanted to see where north is. I assumed north was on top. But here in Statia, you do not just bury remains a certain way. It needs to be, the head is in the west and the feet are in the east. And the reason why, if you don't do that, sometimes you have a conflict where local people will, they'll get upset because you're not burying the person the correct way. And so if you don't take that modern culture, it's probably heavily, it's because of Christianity. But even sometimes I've seen a burial where the person's wishing wasn't really a Christian burial, but when the burial was taking place, they were singing hymns and things like that, because it's part of the culture and it's very strong. So when you're creating something like this, if you don't consider those things, sometimes you'll get more confusion than a unified idea. So take those things into consideration when those coffins line up, that they line up in a certain way, because that's how persons feel culturally, that's how we bury persons.
I'm concerned. I'm going to take that into consideration. That's a good point. Up to now, I did not take it into consideration. But I had in mind north, south, so automatically east, west. I only have to make sure that the head is here and feet there. Yes. Nearly perfect, without knowing what you are telling me now. I'll take it into consideration.
Yeah. I will do that. Of course, just to interject, we have a suggestion box. Not everyone would necessarily want to give their opinions right now. Persons might want to do some research. So I think it is very important that we give you the space to do that, and then you can also send us your ideas, because not everyone is going to speak up in a group either. So we have the suggestion box, but we also have a WhatsApp group. We also have a Facebook page. There are different ways that you can reach us. You can reach Remy, you know how to reach me. Most of you know how to reach me, but all of you, I think. So I think you can either reach out to Remy, you can reach out to myself, you can reach out to Natasha Bajuki, Brother Kenneth is there, and then we all will get the message, and then we can take that into consideration. Yeah, so that's a very good point from Shanna. And one more thing, Remy just reminded me though, Island Council member, that Africans were not lined up in terms of Reburial.
Exactly. Local.
So there's something that I think we need to take into consideration. We have to create the link between us now, but we have to honor their legacy and their memory. Some of them are first generation Africans.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to find a compromise.
Yeah.
I'm giving my opinion now, but because we can't do all things station.
Yeah.
Because before we are stationed, we are Africans.
Yeah.
So I think we have to bear that in mind, and we have to create that link.
Yeah.
All right?
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, that's actually what I wanted to say. I mean, because if you are going to bury them that way, that's a Christian way.
Correct.
Yeah, and that doesn't make sense because they were not Christians. And if you want to go to a place where you want to remember them, you have to remember them the way they were there. And not as, I mean, like, I respect the culture, but that would be disrespectful.
Their culture.
Yeah, exactly. That would be disrespectful to them.
Thank you.
Okay, what I would like to see, if I understand everything correctly, it's a memorialization park. So parks are made to invoke some level of peace from confusion and or everyday life. So of course, I would like to see a lot of trees, and trees that we know were there from a long time. So like the July tree, and I don't know the name of those trees, but the trees that are like the GVP school.
With the yellow thing?
No, the big ones that are like mahogany. Those that I would, because those trees are ridiculously old. So it gives me a sense of, you know, age, and it's something that just invokes peace. And like I was going to mention this, but you said it already. Most of them are from the Congo. So if we could identify DNA-wise each and every one, so let's say 60% of them was from the Congo, but another one was from somewhere else. Then wherever they were from, you have some sort of cultural characterization that represents every person that was buried there. So one come from the Congo, one come from South Africa, one comes. So because Africa is full of cultures, so that's what I would like to see. Yeah, I think that's it.
Mister, would you also bury them, let's say, group by group? So those of Congo on this side and those of...
Not necessarily.
Just asking.
Not necessarily, but I would make sure that every group we know that it's there is represented. And also because they was enslaved, they all came in one group. They didn't know each other's language. They just know that they was getting beat simultaneously. So we bury them together, however it is, but make sure every group is represented there in whichever form or fashion that those groups are accustomed to representing themselves.
Go ahead. I want to say about the space. I would like to build. I would like there to be bronze sculpture, because bronze don't rust; it stays forever. At least 100 years, and I can make the sculpture. You know? So I have a sculpture that I sent to. I have an example that I sent to Sister Shamala here, and maybe she can give you a copy of it. I have it here on my phone if you want to see it.
Okay.
While I do respect everybody's opinion and inputs, I would like to remind everybody of a very, very important fact. The question, how did we arrive here in the first place? We all arrived here as Africans. Whether we came from East Africa, West Africa, South Africa, we came here as African enslaved people. And historically, I know, and I don't mean no disrespect with that, a lot of us do not even know our own history pertaining to our ancestors. And that's part of the knowledge center we hope to create to give that insight. But to say that our ancestors didn't understand each other, that was not the case. They did understand each other all the time, whether they were from west, south, east, or whatever. So let us be clear on that. So to come back to the physical characteristic, the Reburial place should characterize our ancestors' reflection of symbols, whether it's north, west, east, period. I don't have to discuss that too much. We have to remain dignified and respect this, the knowledge of our ancestors, their ritual, their ceremonial and philosophical proceeding as then. That's the way, and whether station culture with Christianity or what, that's indoctrinated part of us today too, has nothing to do with our. So I want to be very clear on these issues. We are African from within our souls. And we came here unwillingly by force. And our connection with our ancestors still live within us today, whether or not we recognize that at all at times. So the physical characteristic has to remain in relation to dignify respect towards our ancestors. Period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shanna?
One of the things that was mentioned and I wanted to say as well is that, thank you, is about the sculptures, and I'm glad that you mentioned it just a while ago, because it is important to have something there that can, when sitting, that you could reflect back on something, a sculpture that kind of symbolizes when the freedom. And these sculptures are very expensive, but something that they can watch and see that they were free. And maybe a lot of people would say, oh, put it so they can see how they were enslaved and maybe chains and all that. But my thing is, I would like to reflect back on the fact that they were free. You know, so for me that was something important. And how you say, I forget the word, call it a plaque, I think it's a plaque, where it has something written on it. So even though you have the information, the knowledge center there is something that you can go, people tend to think on what is happening now, the time now. We have to think further on in the future when we do have more persons coming to our island, tourists coming to our island, and we want them to know this is why the park is here. This is what everything has to be reflected there. So that even when they go to the knowledge center, they know what they are going to ask because they already read something that is there. So as Mrs. Simmons was saying, that it needs to be realistic as well. And as I say, it is expensive. But on the same side, it is important to have certain things like that there.
Thank you. So the space has to teach us something also, Shanna, and that is also one of the categories. So even if we do not put the knowledge center there, you have to read something there about the ancestors. It's something for us to reflect on, for us to think about. You should learn something from that side as well. Yeah? Natasha, you gotta come go to the mic.
No,
Yeah, but for the recording, because we're recording.
No, it was really just a piggyback on what you said, because I don't know who from here has been to the Heritage Center, but things in there, you have definitely. So when we talk about sculpture, we talk about all these different things, honoring people. If you come to the Heritage Center, you find things like that. You've been there as well. And my colleague just reminded me of the gravestones that we have, because that tells a story in and of itself. We have gravestones where the enslaved created their own stones. They literally etched their names in stones. That does a lot of things. It changes the narrative that we are constantly being told that they never knew how to read, write, any of those things. They did. You literally have their right on stone with their name, their birth year, and as my colleagues eloquently put it, because no one was left behind or died to write their death date. There's nothing. That stone speaks volume in and of itself, just seeing. So those kinds of things should be included in whatever memorial, however we choose to memorialize these people. Because at the end of the day, they came from the Congo, but you have a memory station, he will tell you, you have Congo, you have from the beginning, you have this, you have that, you have all different kinds of things. While we need to look at it individually, but collectively they also went through the same struggle.
Yeah.
We have to remember these things. So talking about your perspective and your perspective and your perspective, we're going to be here all year. So let's now take this topic to unify us here and figure ways to unify them. Because we literally have a building, this is what we're talking about here. We have a building full of human remains that are ancestors of each and every one of you. Imagine if it was one generation before. Imagine if we had, I tell you today, I have a building full of your mom, your dad, your grandparents. You wouldn't like it. So let's figure out ways to come together and get this thing done. And the things that we have at the Heritage Center are things that are already there. We can make things, yes. We can spend money, yes. But sometimes we just have to use what we have also. Yeah. Because it came from them.
That was very powerful, Natasha. I think we needed to hear that. And you're right, you're putting us on the path. We have our all individual ideas, but what unifies us? What unified the ancestors? They had, even though some were from the Congo and Benin, they had a lot of things in common. So I think as we create this space, let's look at the commonality, not at the differences. And also, we have our differences, but we need to look at the commonality so that we can create something that represents them, that represents us. So the unified approach. That was a very good intervention, Natasha.
When we are talking about the visitor experience, I think it should be a colorful experience. And the reason why I'm saying colorful experience is because when it comes to the European way of burying their ancestors, it's very gray. And when it comes to the African way, it's very colorful. And I think colorful should be the theme of that burial monument. And also, there is a lot of things that the community can do themselves. Instead of focusing in having people to build something around the memorial, I mean, why not just organize a community day when people can have do some workshop and I don't know, like design or paint the place together. I mean, that would be a really beautiful gift to the ancestors as well. Also thinking about the gravestones that the ancestors make themselves. I mean, respectfully, it would be nice if the new generation would do something like that for them. I mean, like, the dead doesn't need or want something perfect. They want something meaningful. And meaningful means if their children's, you know, the ones that they have lived and endured all these painful things that happen to them, contribute and honor them by they making something for them, that would be something very powerful and very beautiful, and also not expensive at all. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say.
What you're saying is very powerful, and that is the African way. There was a time in Statia where men on Sundays would go to different homes and help each other to build their home. In St. Martin, you call that jollification. It is the African way where we pool our resources together and we do things together as a community. And you are given a brilliant idea. So when we are actually creating that space, instead of hiring in, as you say, these expensive experts, we have carpenters, we have masons, we have artists, the children, because we want to involve them, the schools. How can we create a community day where we can create something that is meaningful to all of us, but that connects us to them and makes it meaningful and honorable to them? So thank you very much, because you're talking about jollification.
For the visitor experience, you know, what would make the site appealing and inviting? One of the things I stressed quite often on when it comes to the memory or even our enslaved ancestors. We weren't always enslaved in Africa. And one of the great things that they could not take from us when they took all our physical possessions, like our jewelry, our names, when they came to St. Eustatius, they came with memory. They could not take our memory and what we knew from before. And here on St. Eustatius, the enslaved ancestors were blessed with the gift of being one of the best stonemasons in the Caribbean. At some point, even Statia volcanic stones, the round stones as you see on the beach, they were being cut and shaped into blocks and being exported to other islands, because the Statia enslaved men and women were masons. They were imported from a region of the Congo that were known for building. And that's one of the things that we are blessed with. And like my colleague said, with those gravestones, you see that also in the Caribbean, no other place the enslaved people would try to etch their name into these blocks. They would literally be signing these blocks. Some of them are written in English, and some of them are even written in what we believe is a local African language. And many of these blocks are found all over St. Eustatius. So for me, when it comes to making this site appealing and inviting, I feel each and every one of these stones should be made, and we should find a way to try to recreate by cutting those stones once again, you know, as a community, and putting that monument together. I would even go as far as probably monuments that are falling apart on St. Eustatius or at the brink of collapsing, that is properly deconstructed, and all of those stones be reused to make this site more appealing and inviting, because it will be telling the story of what they had to do and what they used. And to go as far as the reburial, Shimad, and those of you who don't know it, many of the enslaved ancestors, especially from the Golden Rock site, were buried with personal items. Many personal items that are not European, they actually came from the Congo. Many of them have jewelry, they were buried with jewelry also from that region. It would be good to kind of reincorporate those, like Mr. Kuvule said, those figures and those shapes into the gates, because these people, our ancestors, like I said, though they were stripped of everything, they came with their memory and they really made that memory strong here on Eustatius. So I would like us to kind of use that ability for the memorialization and not to kind of really think as far as we need to go. But like many people said here tonight, we have all the material and tools locally for memorialization. I think the only thing we would probably have to import would be a bronze monument.
Wonderfully.
To add,
I'm sorry.
In the building that you all have, would it be possible to do it? I'm just asking, can they include some of the things that you have there, the pottery and all of that, to incorporate it into this entire
So like we mentioned, we have all of these stones that the enslaved people were taking. Some of them have, for example, Samson Gibbs on one of them, 1810. And when he died, you can find him in the slave register. But the problem is when he died, many of them didn't have the chance to, when you're dead, you can't write your own name. So all of them have birth dates and no death dates, but they all existed. So all of these people will be able to use those stones back. And then one of the things we have with the enslaved ancestors from the Darkside, which I think is a very beautiful mystery we haven't solved as yet, they were all buried with white plates on their chests. We do not know what these white plates symbolize, but having white plates, used in this monument, we can use as well. We also have a whole set of excavated materials from the Free Congo Cemetery and the Free Congo Village here on Eustatius. So many of these artifacts and tools that we have, I would openly be giving, and of course with the government's consent, we can use all of these materials back to the reinterment. So it's part of our heritage. So this way we can show it that way.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
to add to that, Brother Richardson, when it comes to the appearance and the characteristic, remember that has to reflect the struggle as well which our ancestors put up. Take trees. If we take trees, for instance, was a very strategic element within the ancestral struggle, strategically speaking. So the symbolism of trees in relation to our ancestors is very essential. Other things you may find, like we went to a Wallace, the inscription, where they left their handwriting, just to let the enslaver know we are here still. All of those elements reflect our ancestors. So we have a huge amount of elements which we can use and design and put together when it comes to the memorial site and the reburial site, which reflects our ancestors and their tradition, but also their resistance at the same time.
Wonderfully said.
Just to Brother Richardson, I wouldn't bury them again with those plates. When I went there to the Heritage House to see, I got a really bad vibration from those plates, and I mean, everybody can take it or leave it, but I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't bury them with those plates, because the plates, it doesn't symbolize them, but it symbolizes the owners, the white European family, that buried them with those plates. It symbolizes it's talking more about them than the ancestors. And for me, it's just me, but I think it's also a way of, it wouldn't be nice to do that. That's the only thing I want to add to this.
Thank you very much for your input. In terms of, this is the last category, learning, knowledge, experience. What do you want to learn when you visit? What do you want the younger generation to learn? How do we create the space for knowledge, seeking, healing, quiet reflection? How do we connect with the space? How do we connect in the space with the ancestors? How do we create links with past injustices?
movement in human rights, fight against injustices. To build on what Brother Kenneth said, in terms of learning, we have to also see that we also have to see their struggle. But at the same time, I believe in learning, as Shanna said, they were free. They were free individuals before they were human beings with their own civilizations. So what we want to see also is that they had their own traditions, their own rituals. You know, these are things that are important when we visit this space. This is what we would like to learn. We can incorporate a lot of the artifacts, as Wayne said, we have here in creating that space. We need to realize that they came with their own knowledges and that they were people first before they were enslaved individuals. And they really did come with their knowledges. And I think in order to make the next generation proud, in order for them to realize where they came from, it's important for them to know they did not come from enslaved individuals. They came from people who were architects, who were everything, kings and queens. That is important in that space. So not just to focus on the struggle, it's important, but also to show who they were before enslavement and how we can connect their story with our story. So these things are important, and then we use symbolize symbols and colors, as the gentleman said, and we do it together. And I'm really going to think of that, because we have to build this space together, because we are putting some expensive things together to come with an estimate, but if stations really come out and do what we used to do, go around and help each other, I think that could work. I really think that that could work.
I think one of the things we need to take into consideration as well, if you're looking at the, let me just show you what I'm visualizing. If you're looking at this as the entrance, for example, then you need to create a transition in the whole space. So when you come out, okay, I've transitioned in the whole process of these people. Now we are looking at here, for example, at the entrance. Maybe we could create in that space things about them before they came to station. And then as you go further in, the sphere is going to change to when they got here. And then what happened to them after they got here, and then eventually they were free at the entrance, at the exit. Something in that line, so that you get a complete experience as you enter and you exit.
And that's lovely. Just to add, we then should probably end with the descendant, those of us living now, because we are here because of them. Okay. So as we transition, we have to create something that says something about the living today, you know, and the future generation. So that is telling a story in and of itself.
I think learning, knowledge, and experience is so important, because that is something we've been having over time too. Because right now, in the mindset of the descendants and everything which is playing out, we speak about slavery past. But what Mr. Cotto just illustrated, even when you enter there, you can take something original. Because if you go back into the civilization of our ancestors, there is a civilization which we hardly speak about prior to slavery. And so I think that should be a very interesting and important combination of the knowledge which we are going forward with. We were never always been enslaved people. They have, even the pyramids today is an example of the great architectural work, which the Western world nobody yet can understand. So we have a great civilization going back into Kemet, Asian Africa, and that combination prior to slavery, we should actually incorporate in the knowledge as we go forward.
Great. We end, and then we're going to start.
Yeah. I think those are good suggestions. I would even say maybe a multi-learning center, virtual walkthrough. I know in Holland there's a place, Kinderland, where it carries you through the body. You sneeze, what comes to your face, and all of that. So maybe something where maybe the children will be able to have a sort of a feel of what it was back then. I don't know that would be too frightening there, but virtual site walk through like what Nalo and Google said. I think those are good suggestions.
Thank you, Adriana.
I have feedback based on that. I have an answer to the green. Feedback based on that is I always think about sustainability and maintenance. The last thing you want to do is to create an elaborate, interesting concept of Afro-Caribbeanism over the generations, and it's something that's quite etched. It's like the museum we have on the island. It was the same since I was a little girl, so you have to visit it once, maybe a second time if you're involved and have a opinion of it. So whatever you put, it needs to be something that you can create a living exhibit. So something maybe every 2 to 3 years you can reimagine it, and that is something that's considered in the structure. That's one. For the blue square, how do you create space for knowledge seeking, healing, quiet reflection? I think if you give people the space, they do the thing. So if you create the space that facilitates conversation, like they always say, don't put children in a building with a long hallway and then scream the whole time, don't run. The space invites you to run. So create a space where I do want to sit down and have conversation, where I can put group tables together, where I can move things around, where I can push things to the side and dance, where I can whatever. And to go back to, that's one. And that kind of goes back to the conversation we were having about whether or not you put the heritage, the information thing, and why I think it would be important. Also in the gather of sustainability, to connect the information you get to the space from existing organizations around the space. You're not going to put down a container with air conditioning blasting all day with one person in there for the 3 people that come visit per day. It is a waste of resources, it's not fun for the individual. What makes more sense is that you connect the space to spaces on the island that people already get to learn and already you optimize what you already have, as opposed to doing this divide and conquer thing we inherited from ancestors. So that's my thought on that. Pertaining to the dark green one of the reasons I admire Remy so much is the way he tells our story. Like I've started saying, like this year, after I learned about the June 12th upstunt, that should be restationary. Because it's like when Remy talks about the history and the story of Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Station people, it is a brilliant, sometimes conniving individuals. That's not a story I got. When he talks about, for example, monuments and stuff, the monument is not interested. What's interesting, because the monument is some random white man I never get to know. But what's interesting is the skill and the technique that goes into monuments that last multiple hurricanes. That's what I want the next generation to know, that we come from brilliant people.
So certainly the space should reflect that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that being said, I know we are getting tired. Zimmerman, we have a lot to consider. In terms of next steps, the idea is that Zimmerman is going to create 3 concepts, as I explained. He's going to come back to us, he's going to present them, we're going to put it to a vote. The concept that is chosen, we are going to present that to the Executive Council. We want to do that in September. I know that this is ambitious, but hey, we're speaking it into existence. So then the favorite draft design is presented to community and the Executive Council. We will do that in October. We would want Zimmerman to come back hopefully by the end of September to show us the concepts. And then we have October to present the favorite draft design.
Hopefully we would have had the land for reburial at that moment. At that moment, I'm still pushing towards government designating the land because I think that that will go much quicker than having private land, and we're going to be forever with that. So if government can designate that piece of land, I think that that would be a good thing, and that's what we're going to push for the land. And then, of course, once that land is designated, the idea is that the architect, Mr. Zimmerman, finalizes the design with, and he assists us with requiring the necessary permits. We're not going to build the space, but maybe we might need a reburial permit. I don't know. We have to figure that out. We would like to do that in November. Once we have the land, of course, we would have to assess the land. We would like to build the coffins in November. I'm kind of thinking about the station day week of activities where we all get together and we do that. So we really do that together as community. If we want to get the young people involved, we can do that as well. And once we have done that, the reburial ceremony for December, December 2024. So once we have the land, the assessments are done, the coffins are built, they are placed in the coffins, and I know that that's a process in and of itself. The idea is to have the ceremony, literally putting them in the ground, and then the building of the memorial will come after. We cannot wait to build this to put them in the ground. Once we have the land, we put them in the ground and we build from there. That is the idea. That's what we're fighting for. So hopefully we can get them in the ground by December 2024, but we will need the land in order to do that. And now the Commissioner of Culture would like to say something.
A lot of things, actually. Good evening, everyone, and I'm happy to hear all the dialogue back and forth. I think it's very needed for such an important moment like this. First of all, I would like to say I'm just coming in as Commissioner of Culture, so I'm still basically getting the feedback from my predecessor, which is Commissioner Bergman. I did call him on the phone to ask a few questions, because I want to state here tonight that government have never refused to give any land, or not that we're not working along together to get the right land. But hearing the discussion here tonight is clearly important that, again, we try to understand what we want to achieve. Because you're hearing neighborhood, you're hearing this, you're hearing that, and again, the reality is government don't own a lot of land. Reality is we have land that we have to do different type of development with. So finding this type of land that can accommodate not the 67 alone that have to be buried, but for the future, because it's clearly, like I keep on stating, when I was in the Island Council, we're going to encounter this all the time. And what do we do to give them a respectful reburial? I mean, we have different, positions of what we should do and what we should not do. But I believe we should make it sustainable, that the next generation can understand and respect, the struggle, that our ancestors went through, and understand that because of we are here today. And I'm happy to see the discussion, because normally this discussion don't happen. And when we actually saw the whole uproar with how it was dealt with, again, I was happy to see my people have that feedback, and not that we just sit back and it's, oh, ancestors, you have different viewpoints. That was then, I'm no longer a slave, but you have those discussions too, where people feel that there's no connection anymore. They're not a slave. But I think once we can finalize this, then of course it's more easy for government to then pinpoint where we have land and what is the best. And as Adriana said, if it comes down to say, well, hey, we have to now connect the project that HOD along with this, and then make it even more efficient. We could get more, because there's some funding already available, put it together, then that might be the way to go. But one discussion I did not hear is about the reburial ceremony. How does that day look like? I mean, we're focusing on the reburial memorial, but I believe that we should have a discussion on how that does they look like. And that should become, I think should be parallel, because if you have a timeline so tight, when do we start this discussion? Because I guess you're gonna have, a more deeper in-depth discussion, because it's gonna be very interesting. How do we put them in the grave? Do we have, like he said, it was very colorful was a very colorful celebration basically of life. So how do we translate that to make that day a day that we can also respect fully the way that they would have done it and also be educational for us? I think as well, what I would like to see in terms of knowledge is that, like I said, before we were slaves, we were architects and all those different things, but also the men were providers, protectors for their family. If you look at social media now, the black man is the worst, you understand? They're always there for broken homes and stuff like that, and you know what slavery played on the role in our family settings. They broke our family settings, and the man became not a protector, not a provider. The woman became basically the head of the home because she had to keep things together. And I think that we should also reflect that our men were men in the fact that they would take care of the family, they were lovers, providers, protectors, because how society at this point portray our black men is not in a good light. So we that need to go back to so that the young people can know that they weren't like this. This is not what to expect of a black man. And black men can then try their best to be better. So I think all this should be also added within the knowledge. And I believe we have a lot of good recommendations coming out. Government is committed to seeing this project through. The date, we hope we can be able to be met, but I think I would like to see the discussion also surrounding the reburial be brought up, that we can have discussions from now and not have to wait until close to the date to have those discussions. But thank you very much for tonight. I want to thank everybody for coming out, especially, I mean, that's your role, but I still am happy to see people coming out and taking part in discussions, and I would like to see the next step as well as going into the schools. Let's hearing what the young children have to say, not only GBP, but let's go to the primary schools, get their feedback, that they can also feel taken along in this, because they will not come tonight to something like this, but let's get into the schools, get their feedback, and that can give us a more rounded vision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Leda. In terms of the reburial ceremony, you don't want to bombard people with too much information, but that is part of it. We have to have that discussion. And we're going to do that together with our partners. For example, Brother Kenneth's organization, we really need to do that. And we're going to need to have some African knowledge when it comes to the reburial ceremony. Because if we want to honor them, we need to consult with African people who really have the knowledge of how do we do that. So that is definitely a next step, that we certainly take the community's perspective into consideration, but we need the African individuals who know what this is all about. So I just wanted to add that.
Permit is needed for reburial.
Is a permit needed for reburial? Because we won't need a building permit now, but we would need a reburial permit. Do we need that?
I think you will have to indeed put in a permit for the reburial, because of course it is an event, so permits are always needed. That is just standing law. So when it reaches that far, then I think my colleagues at the culture department will be able to assist you with that part of the program.
So we would have to put in the request. Yes. So we have to put it up.
But is that burial, or if you keep an event for it?
Well, it is not a funeral, it is an event. So you would have to put it in properly. Yeah, it's not a funeral, it's an event. So we will have to put in a permit to follow the official channels like we do with everything.
Yeah. Permit, right?
Yeah.
So we need 2 permits to gather in an open space, what we normally do, and a reburial permit.
It's an event, it's a permit.
For the event itself, you just need a permit, so we do not need a reburial permit. That's what we're asking.
It's an event.
For the event itself,
The event of reburial.
you need a permit, and part of the event is of course the burial, but for that particular part you do not.
So we need a permit for the event.
Not the reburial.
You're including the event.
Okay, yeah. All right. Adriana, time is running out. The young man is recording. We're gonna have to bring this evening to an end. Adriana, and then.
I'm sorry to end on this note, but I feel compelled to share. I think one of the what was the word? Mass action.
Did he say that?
They're not hearing good.
The roots of slavery, fruits of slavery. Okay. We keep talking about the fruits of slavery. So slavery happened, and then there are consequences. There's structural slavery, there's also mental slavery, whatever. I believe one of the issues we struggle with is the sting of nepotency that comes from the colonizer, this fake urgency, the money going back. I am sorry, 3 months? I'm the last historian, I respect that. But what I see will happen is we need to rush through to put people in the ground, and then after that doesn't happen, so we can say it done, so we can keep the money, which is $100,000, which is nothing. I said it's a problem, but this is nothing. And then they're in the ground, and then you need to start the construction. And what I'm seeing is the beer bottles and the Chinese food containers on top of this while they're building. Just because we had to put them in the ground quick, because the colonizers will take back the money. And I am personally bothered by that. So I hate this timeline. I hate the idea that it's a real archaeological assessment on 2,000 square meters in a month. I hate this forcing us to make coffins in 1 week of activity because $100,000 we back to the colonizers, give back to them.
You know something?
We got millions available.
You know Adriana?
And I know I'm on the national rate.
No.
Yes.
You know, I have a personal opinion and I have a professional stance. All right? So I have a personal opinion as well, Adriana, and personally, I do agree with you. But we have a task to fulfill, and everyone we spoke with, we have been at this since 2022. And everyone, besides the money conversation, everyone has said to us there's an urgency. They need to go back in the ground. And yes, there is an urgency to put them in the ground. Los van dat gesprek, so separate from the money, there is an urgency, and for us as committee, there is an urgency, and we're going to put them in the ground. And I hear what you say about the beer bottles, but then isn't that up to us then to decide as a community how we're going to protect that space? So we can do that. We can chew gum, we can ride a bike and chew gum at the same time. So we don't have to do one or the other, we can do both. So if you have ideas in regards to how we can keep that space clean, please let us know so that when that time comes, we will do just that as community.
I just don't want, like I watched the story of Bones, and I don't know who hasn't seen it, but it literally gives you chills. Yes. These people, the same committee, like you guys have, works for years. And at the end, they make a mass grave, pile the people on top of each other, shoot a dot on top of them, and then do it again on another island. So I just don't want to repeat this.
And we don't either, because we want to learn from that. We have St. Elena in the back of our minds, and we want to make a conscious effort to not do that, and we need community to do that. So we're going to have to round up because people are getting hungry, people are getting sleepy. Do you have any last? Yes?
One thing is the story of Bones. I was going to bring it up. If you haven't seen that documentary, please go and see it, because I believe we are going through the same experiences. And if you don't learn from what happened there, exactly, you're going to have a mass grave and put it. And basically that's where I can see things heading. But if we work together and sometimes work out our differences, we can make it happen.
Okay, thank you. Well, Kenneth is the last, and then we have to close up.
Yeah. There's a lot has been said. I think when it comes to the commemoration, wherever day that happened, it has to be based on an African traditional based commemoration, not like the descent of the enslaver on the 1st of October last year in Curacao, inaugurated Tula, where you say, saw what our ancestors rejected. And I do agree with Mrs. Adriana, although the urgency is there for the long-term vision and position of memorialization in relation to the continuation of memorializing and honoring our ancestors, if we are not careful, we would lose that within the notion of the urgency. I know we are working very hard, but we have to take that very carefully in consideration, because once we re-implement our ancestors without carefully long-term vision, it's over. And the money is there. And by the way, we shouldn't be having too much a discussion about a permit for Reburial neither, because in the first place, our ancestors were not asked to be taken out of the ground. So in that regard, which our government, I couldn't care less, the government should facilitate and make that happen as best as possible. And I would refrain from the terminology called in that moment an event. It's not an event. It's a memorializing moment, regaining our ancestors' dignity.
So on that note, people are eating already, people are drinking. Thank you, and we will have a follow-up as soon as possible. Okay.